I figured you'd be here. Thanks, Sally. Where's the other one? Oh, there should be another one. Oh, I.
Hello, HAL members. Welcome to the October meeting of the HAL Howard Astronomical League, our general meeting. So this is going to be a special meeting. We're going to start with a presentation by astronaut Tom Jones, and then we'll go and we're going to take a little break. So we'll have about 1 hour worth of presentation first from our speaker. We're broadcasting from the Howard County Library in Oakridge. So we'll do that for about an hour, and then we're going to switch rooms and run our regular meeting. There might be a slight delay during that interim, but please hang on and don't leave. So again, welcome to HAL, and we should be getting started in just a minute.
Hi everybody. Thank you for all coming out today. We are going to have a very special presentation for Maryland STEM Festival. We are very fortunate to have Dr. Tom Jones, an astronaut, here today to talk about the space shuttle, his missions, and other missions.
Victor, are you going to share your screen?
Right up front there, okay, and we will also have a signing afterwards. We're going to ask when people do get the book, if you come around this way, just to, limit the crowds. Thank you all for coming. If you're curious, bathrooms are in the back. So, thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Phil Rogoski. I'm founder and executive director of Maryland STEM Festival, and I coordinated Dr. Jones' visit tonight. I've sort of been communicating with him for a while. Actually participated in the STEM Festival years ago. Tomorrow's the kickoff of the STEM Festival, our 10th year of STEM Festival. So keep checking out. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce a local boy from Essex, Dr. Tom Jones, who has gone on to serve in the Air Force, at the Air Force Academy, and has been on 4 space missions, studying planetary science, and is here to talk about space shuttles.
Thank you, everybody. Can you hear me? In fact,
Testing 1, 2.
okay.
Testing 1, 2, 3. How about this one? Is that it?
Yes.
Fall on the floor.
So I put on my blue jacket so you would believe that I've actually been happy. I've overcome the skepticism. Welcome, everybody. Good to see all my Maryland neighbors here tonight. I'm from eastern side of Baltimore County. That's where I grew up in Essex, and then Middle River adjacent. And got to fly on the space shuttle, work for NASA for 11 years. I live in Northern Virginia nowadays. So I'm glad to be here and share some stories with you about the space shuttle, which was the spaceship that I flew. And so I'm going to rapidly give you a taste of the book, and we'll have some time for questions and answers at the end. And I hope you'll save up those for the end of the presentation. We'll finish up my talk at about 7:30, and then we'll go to Q&A, and we'll have some time for signing the books after. So very glad that you're here. Very glad that Phil invited me to participate in the STEM Festival. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about how this book project got started. Excuse the glasses, it's with the lights out, it's a bit better for me. So, space shuttle stories. I flew on the space shuttle 4 times as part of my career, 3 science missions and a trip to the International Space Station. And back in 2020, just before the virus got started, I was looking for my next book project, and I was thinking about what to do to try to relate some of my experiences, but also the larger experience with the space shuttle. So just to remind you, shuttle retired in 2011. We'll talk about that. Just to remind you what the space shuttle was like. I've got a little. I was on that machine. And you would never be able to talk to the other four crewmates on that space shuttle Columbia without having a helmet with a faceplate closed and your earphones on. Because it's that deafening when you're inside the cabin. And there's a lot of shaking that you don't see close up in that video. The most exciting physical experience of your professional life, I can guarantee. So I had flown with about 20 other astronauts, and in 2020, when the virus was just looming another month away or so, I was looking for my next project, and I thought, maybe I can put something together to tell the human side of the space shuttle and its 30-year career from 1981 to 2011. And so that's the book that I came up with, was published last October. And we're going to talk about it a little bit in detail tonight. But the space shuttle was for 30 years America's iconic station. This is my grandson. And in a visit with him about a month ago, he was putting together a Lego space shuttle. So it's 2024, 13 years after the shuttle retired, it's still America's iconic station. And this is what kids the world over, and not only in the US, but the world over, think is America's station, is still a space shuttle. That may change over time, but it's nice to see that my old station is still something that kids are really grabbed by. So NASA, when the shuttle retired in 2011, wrote a bunch of books and reports about the shuttle's career. And one of them is on the left there, Wings in Orbit. It talks about the engineering and science achievements of the space shuttle. And then a good friend of mine, Dennis Jenkins, on the right, has written a series of books about the shuttle. This one's called The History of the American Space Shuttle. And it's we open the book, it's a 2-page spread for each mission, 135 of them over 30 years. And there's the technical data about each mission and who was on it, and it's pictures from the flights. But I sat down and had dinner with him in 2020 and said, well, Dennis, what's missing is the personal stories. You cemented the history here, the technical history, but I want to do this personal side. Do you think that would be a good project? He said, oh, that would be great. So I thought, well, let me look up some of the possibilities. So in the space shuttle's 30-year career, there were about 835 human beings who occupied a seat on the space shuttle as it went to space. Well, I can't talk to 835 people in different stories. I wouldn't live long. Then I looked up, of course, many of them flew multiple times like I did. And so there were 355 people who flew individually on the space shuttle, 355. I still can't talk to that many people and make that a project. But there were 135 space shuttle missions from 81 to 2011. And so I said, maybe at the outside, I could talk to one person from every one of the 135 missions. And I said, if I start now, maybe it'll take me a year or so to get all the interviews done. Well, I got them all done, but over 130 of them. But it took me 2.5 years to talk to all of my colleagues who flew one from each mission. And so that was the project that I took on. And I sat down with Zoom and face-to-face in some cases, phone in other cases, and talked to over 130 of my colleagues and got one story from each of the missions. So that's a 45-minute interview, and you can imagine how much space that takes on a printed page. I can't publish that. And Smithsonian Books, the publisher, said, why don't we scope it so that it's about 300 pages long? That means I had to boil everybody's interview down to about 1 page. So 1 page for each shuttle astronaut story. And that's about 550 words. So I had to select from the long interview enough good little vignettes or nuggets to put on the page of paper. And then I was asked by Smithsonian to come up with about 500 to 600 photographs to represent each of the missions. Total 500 to 600 photos to represent the mission. So if you look at my book today, this one, You'll see it at the summary table out there. There are about 3 or 4 shots of each mission. We have mission packs, we have a picture of the crew for each of the 2-page spreads on the shuttle. And I've written some history, my personal take on the origins and the long career, and then the history of the shuttle in context now that we can look back from a dozen more years since it retired. So let's remember what the shuttle was all about. Most of you remember that, but there's some young people here who were maybe even not around when the shuttle was formed, or when it retired, and they perhaps didn't get a chance to see it in person. So the shuttle was a system that represented all of the nation's needs in space. It's called the Space Transportation System. And that was going to be a launcher for the Pentagon, launcher for scientists, launcher for commercial satellite builders. And it's going to take everything that the United States needs to get into space up to orbit and maybe bring it back. And it was going to be reusable to do that. So the whole goal was to build a reusable space plane and make it cheap because it got reused over and over again, and make it reliable so that it's almost going to be like an airliner to space. And the astronauts would just wear their flight coveralls, like a jacket like this on the orbit. And then it was going to be a very capable and flexible machine. Well, out of those 3 objectives, low cost, reliability, and versatility, it failed 2 of the 3 tests. Not cheap, it was not especially reliable. It's a fragile ship that over the course of 30 years lost 2 shuttles and crews, 14 astronauts. But it was tremendously versatile and adaptable, and it was a very successful spaceship. Not like the airliner, the DC-3 of the space era, but it was a bridge to the 21st century that enabled us to learn from this ship and then get on to the future, the 21st century spaceships that we have today. So it was in 3 parts. The shuttle had a reusable space plane, the big white bird strapped to the big brown fuel tank. The second part was the reusable the disposable brown fuel tank in the middle. And then on each side of the fuel tank were 2 big solid rocket motors that gave you the big boost off the pad, and they were reusable. So the space plane was reusable. That's called the orbiter. The boosters were reusable, but the ground tank was thrown away on every mission. It didn't make sense to recover it from near orbital velocity, and there are a lot of them on the floor of the Indian Ocean today. There's the space plane motor, and it could carry a tremendous variety of payloads in the payload bay. That's the big garage. Right there in the middle of the shuttle. Not very good. It's 60 feet long and 15 feet wide. And the Air Force and NASA have agreed on that size, so it can carry all the biggest satellites that they were planning to launch in the future. So that 60 by 15 foot garage, the payload bay, is where they carry everything in space. The shuttle's a truck in some ways. It's also an RV, because there's room for 7 or 8 astronauts on board. And then there's on the left side of the ship in the nose in the front cabin. And then there's some engines at the back. And in space, you open the cargo bay of the garage doors and have it allow you to launch satellites, retrieve broken satellites from space. And in that payload bay, you can put a big laboratory. That big cylinder in the back is a space lab. So you can practice building a space station and run experiments in the shuttle. You can use that robot arm that you see there sticking out of the payload bay, contribution from our Canadian friends. And that was allowing us to launch things out of the shuttle and grab things in space and bring them back to the shuttle payload bay and allow us to return them to the Earth for reuse. And I got to operate the shuttle robot arm. This is a little picture of one of the satellites that we deployed and retrieved with the arm. And on my 3rd mission on that Columbia flight that we saw last summer, I operated the arm and retrieved this satellite and launched it into space. We launched it and retrieved it. It's important to do in that order. That's called the ratio material science. And so what a marvelous flying machine that the aliens gave to us to be a shuttle payload, a shuttle nuclear system. And then another payload we carry on the shuttle was a big giant observatory. It's like this one, the Chandra X-ray telescope. It filled the entire cargo bay of the shuttle. Launched 25 years ago, it's still out there in space looking at all the most exciting science targets for astronomers in the X-ray part of the spectrum. And of course, you know about the Hubble and other great observatories launched by the space shuttle. In fact, on my first 2 flights, we carried this radar laboratory in the cargo bay of Endeavour, bouncing radio waves off the Earth to construct a map of our changing planet from 120 miles up in space. And that was a really rewarding job for me as a planetary scientist. And then we often forget about the Pentagon's role with the space shuttle. It provided some of the funding to build the shuttle back in the 70s. And then we launched on the space shuttle 11 different missions to orbit with secret, top secret stuff that went up to space to help protect our nation. And the astronauts that I interviewed for the book, they couldn't tell me even today what they did on those classified missions. They got medals, and then when the Defense Department gave them the medal for their achievement, they got presented with it, and they had to give it back because the medals were classified. Some did get their medals later. So this was a missile warning satellite, unclassified, launched by the shuttle back in the 1990s. Big, gargantuan observatories in space that be down that are adversaries, so you don't have any Pearl Harbor surprise attack on us. And many of the astronauts that I talked to about these classified missions said, can't tell you what we did, but I'm convinced, Tom, that the work we did on the shuttle on these Defense Department payloads shortened the Cold War and made sure that we won the Cold War. So I think it was a significant contribution. And then the big job for the shuttle at the end of its career was 10 years of building a space station. And that's what it was originally designed to do, was be a truck to haul the components of the space station out, and work roughly contributed some in the 1990s, but 80% of the space station was hauled up to space by the shuttle. It made about 3 dozen trips to the space station to build it, and I was on one of them on the shuttle Atlantis. This is the Endeavour docked at the space station near the end of its career. So I want to give you just a taste of these 135 missions that the shuttle flew, give you a flavor for the book, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. An easy way to get this talk is just open my book and read all the stories, but that would take us about 3 days. So we'll just do a little sampling. Okay, so the first time the shuttle flew was in 1981, and STS stands for Space Transportation System. That was the official title of each of these missions, STS 1 through 135. And they didn't fly in order. That's something you can read about in the book. That helps us keep the paperwork straight. We can have an STS. So the first flight was going to be a 2-person crew. John Young on the left, Bob Crippen on the right. The United States had never launched a rocket for the first time without multiple unpiloted test flights to make sure the rocket was safe. In the case of the shuttle, that wasn't possible because the shuttle was designed with a human crew in the loop to control and operate it. You could not reliably get to space and back on autopilot. So these 2 guys volunteered to ride the rocket on its first flight. And it was called the boldest test flight in history, and I certainly agree with that. These were 2 courageous men. Bob Crippen on the right was the pilot. The commander was John Young on the left. He walked on the moon, flown in the Gemini program. He was one of my astronaut instructors later on, so I got to meet him, fly jets with him. So these guys were the pinnacle of that test piloting pyramid, which you might have heard about, the right stuff. So here they are, and they volunteered to go on this mission. Now, John Young was passed away, but Bob Crippen gave me an interview for this, and so just flavor what he said. He said, STS-1 was the first space shuttle mission in orbit, and its success was extraordinarily important to NASA and the country. My biggest worry was, would we launch? There were so many things that could go wrong with the kid. John, on the left, said that if they were going to light off 7 million pounds of thrust under you, and you weren't a little bit excited, you didn't understand the situation. Both John and I understood the situation. And he said, the excitement didn't really hit me until the launch countdown passed 1 minute to go. Then I turned to John and said, I think we might do it. And then he talks about how the first day was quite a ride, very pronounced low frequency vibration. In fact, the sound waves coming off that initial ignition of the booster rockets was so intense that it damaged some of the internal structure of the shuttle as it lifted off. So again, first test flight of the V ship. And he's been asked what the most memorable moment on the mission was. I like to use John's expression, the part between takeoff and landing. Since we landed at Edwards Air Force Base, and John took over after 2.5 days, they came back from pilot. And then about Mach 1, as we normally do, John took over manually and did a big left bank to circle around the dry lakebed runway at Edwards Air Force Base. I looked out his window and I could see thousands of people out there on the lakebed. The one that really got people's attention. I was just hoping that none of them was out there on the runway. So they were kept a couple of miles from the runway on the big head, all people in the RVs, but they did get to see Columbia touchdown successfully, completing the first flight of the space shuttle. What a milestone that was. And I remember one astronaut, Pete Conrad, commenting on TV, he was asked, "They think we've caught up with the Russians now that Columbia has flown?" And he said, "Caught up with them? How do we leapfrog them?" So it's a big step forward for us in spaceflight. Now, shuttle had a lot of firsts in its career. They chose a new batch of astronauts to join the Corps to fly the space shuttle. First 6 women joined the astronaut corps in 1978 for the space shuttle. And we could fly a wider spectrum, not just test pilots, a wider spectrum of Americans. So we could fly Americans of all backgrounds, all ethnic and racial backgrounds, scientists and engineers instead of just test pilots. And so we were able to have a broader selection of Americans' talents feeding into the crews of the space shuttle. First 6 women, Asian Americans, African Americans, Hispanic Americans. I've worked with a lot of these wonderful people. That was the best part of my job, was working with all the talent and creativity in the astronaut corps. So Sally Ride, there she's 4th from the left. And she was the first astronaut, female astronaut to ride a shuttle on MTS. And she said, as we were about to step into the orbiter right before launch, I think we were all a little bit apprehensive about what was about to happen. I think we all was excitement. You're the only ones on the launch pad. You've just gone all the way up this elevator to the top, and there are just 3 or 4 people up there. They're going to strap you in the orbiter, and then they're going to leave you. It's a very lonely feeling as they leave the orbiter as soon as they close the hatch, wave goodbye to you, and leave the pad. And then she got to space with her crew, and she is in orbit. And she was not there alone, of course. She was a member of a team. This is her STS-7 crew. And she said, we got up there and it was 200 miles above the Earth. I saw the atmosphere, just a thin blue band above the horizon, separating Earth from the blackness of space. I watched a huge hurricane swirling the Atlantic, and enormous dust storms spreading across the clouds below. And some nights I could see lightning lighting up the clouds, jumping from cloud to cloud across the sky. One night as we passed over Florida, I watched all the cities from Miami to New York twinkle in the darkness. She was up there on Challenger. And she said, there's a sense of camaraderie while you're up there. You're part of a team, you're great friends. You've been training with them for a year, and it's just like a family in a new experience. And she went on to fly again, and of course, all of the 5 fellow women astronauts all got to fly in space. And I've known, I think we lost Judy Resnick and Sally Ride's one, so I've known all the other 4 during their careers. Another good story about the shuttle is about the spacewalks that we did on many of the shuttle flights, especially the Global Space Station. But there had to be a first spacewalk. That was on STS-6. Then on STS-41B on Challenger, 2 astronauts were going to fly a jetpack for the first time. Go outside, strap on a jetpack, and man the maneuvering unit and fly around. One was Bruce McCandless and one was Bob Stewart. You see him in this picture. Bob is an Army test pilot. And he and Bruce McCandless were going to fly the jetpack for the first time. It wasn't George Clooney. No, it was not. You've all seen the picture. One of the most famous ones from the shuttle. And that's Bruce flying 100 yards out away from the shuttle, flying the man maneuvering unit. He had a fantastic time out there. I interviewed Bruce before he passed away. He said, when I got out away from the shuttle, I became very cold. Away from the payload bay, I wasn't getting any heat reflected back into the pressure suit. Now we had a big knob on the front of the suit's display and control module for temperature control. Here it is. There's the big knob. That's the cooling and heating control knob. And if you look at it, you see the C and H. You can figure out what that's for. Well, cold and hot. He said, and look at the numbers around in your eye. You're backwards. Why is that? It's on the front of your chest pack. And so in an astronaut spacesuit, you can't look down through the helmet and see the front of that control module. So you have a mirror on your wrist and you hold it in front of that module and you read the reflection of the knob, and then the number will correct the mirror image. So Bruce says, we had a big knob for temperature control. It was marked C on one end and H on the other one. Naively, I thought that H stood for hot. but H really stood for not quite so bold. So straight, teeth were shattered by the time you loaded or flew back to the cargo bay and got out of the NMU. Now, Bob Stewart, my friend, got to fly the NMU on his test flight, and he thought it was marvelous. Bob said, I can't tell you how easy it was to fly the NMU. It was just a delight. You can thread a needle with that sucker. As Newton taught us, force equals mass times acceleration, and you control all the forces. It was a delightful machine. He said he gave it the top test pilot score he'd ever given any machine in his career. He said, while I was out there looking at the orbiter and the Earth, I got to thinking, what would it be like to be the only person in the universe? So I turned the NMU to where I couldn't see the Earth, the moon, the sun, or the shuttle. I could only see the blackness of space. It lasted about 15 seconds. I thought, well, let's just turn around and make sure everything's still there. That was an interesting feeling I did not expect. Okay, so I mentioned that we had 2 tragic accidents with the shuttle. You can read about why they happened in the book. I knew the second crew astronauts lost on Columbia. And in Challenger in 1986, the shuttle had a design flaw in its booster rockets, and the ship broke up during ascent, and all 7 astronauts in Sea were killed. You remember the school teacher from New Hampshire, Krista McCall. She's in the back row, second from the left. And so she was a specialist flying on this one mission to talk to school children all over the country about the importance of education. This is what she said. Space is for everybody. It's a new world out there, a new frontier, and a lot of people who we have in our classrooms are going to be living and working in space. When you think about the future and those people flying in space, it's going to be those kids in our classrooms. It's a wonderful thought. So that was Kristen McCall. The commander of the ship was Dick Scobie. I got to meet him before his mission at grad school at the University of Arizona. And even today at the space station, a cargo ship just arrived up there this summer. It's called the SS Dick Scobie. Remember that crew and their mission on SCS-51 now. These were all heroes of mine, and they inspired me to apply to the astronaut program. This Kristen McCall at the top of the vomit comet, straining her plane when she's getting ready for her shuttle trip. And her backup on the way is Barb Morgan, who, after the accident, became an astronaut. She was a school teacher, biology teacher, flew in space as a mission specialist like me, a professional. So it took NASA 2 years to get the shuttle redesigned and recertified for flight. And the first one to fly after the Challenger accident was STS-26, the crew of Discovery. And Rick Houck was the commander. And this is what he told me about their trip to the satellite in 1988. And there's the crew of Discovery. And they noticed that all the technicians at the Cape getting Discovery ready for launch always had a beer party on Friday afternoons when they knocked off work. And they all wore loud Hawaiian shirts to the party. And the technicians called themselves the Loud and Proud crew. And the astronauts said, we're going to honor our friends who got our spaceship ready. When we get to space, we're going to put on Hawaiian shirts. So they became part of the Loud and Proud crew when they got to orbit. Rick said, most of us in the office have a sense of confidence in NASA that we really believe that we have to do this business in space. So you say to yourself, well, I don't really have to worry about that. I have to worry about whether I train well enough so that I don't make mistakes. But honestly, I didn't worry about going into space with these crew members. I told my family this flight will be the safest flight that NASA has ever flown to date. What I did not say to my family, of course, was that it was guaranteed that I was coming home, because you just can't have that guarantee. And so when I got to orbit, we decided instead that each one of us would compose and read a section of a tribute to the Challenger crew. All these words were spoken individually, and they all were from the heart. Rick said, today, up here where the blue sky turns to black, we can say at long last to Dick, Mike, Judy, to Ron and Elle, and to Krista and Greg, dear friends, we have resumed the journey that we promised to continue for you. Dear friends, your loss has meant that we could confidently begin anew. Dear friends, your spirit and your dream are still alive in our hearts. And that was the tribute that each of them read in turn to the crew. Now you know that the Hubble was launched by the shuttle. had launched with a misshapen mirror. So for the telescope to live up to its goals, it had to be repaired. And a crew of 7 astronauts went up on STS-61 on Endeavour to fix the telescope. Here's the crew of that Hubble repair mission. And Kathy Thornton is at lower right, and she gave me an interview about her mission to fix the Hubble. She was one of those 4 spacewalkers. She said on the 7th spacewalk, Tom Akers and I removed a warped Hubble solar array that wouldn't retract properly. The array was a giant nothing. It didn't weigh very much. And there's one of the 2 solar arrays on the left that's warped, and they had to remove it and replace it with a new set. So Kathy had to hold on to that array, and there she is in her spacesuit holding on to this 25-foot long solar panel. She said, once we let it go, I didn't shut it. I just left it floating there. They pulled me back on the arm, and it was just amazing that 10 bower socks fired the thrusters to separate from it. The exhaust plume hit that solar array, and it bent over almost double, and then sprang out and kept oscillating while it was cruising over the Middle East. This array was like a giant pterodactyl cruising over the desert. And she said she went on to do the rest of the spacewalks to help improve repair the Hubble. And she said, the other thing that's special to me about that mission of getting Hubble up to its full capability is that when we flew it, Carol, my oldest daughter, was 11 years old. She went on to get her PhD in astrophysics using Hubble data. I hope Hubble lasts forever. And so, all right. Well, John Glenn, first American to orbit the Earth, 1962. One of my heroes growing up. He was a senator, and he got the job to fly on a NASA mission, a science research mission. As a privilege of flying on that mission, he was going to add to studies of aging people, because many astronauts in orbit exhibit similar symptoms to those who are older. So John Glenn, 77 at the time, went up on STS-95, which was approved. There's John at the upper right of the picture. Now, when I was a kid growing up in Essex, I bought this book, Americans in Orbit, about the 7 Mercury astronauts. I took it up to John Glenn in Houston when he was training for this mission. And I just signed my book. He was a great gentleman. He said, call me John. It's not Senator. It's not Mr. Glenn or Colonel Best. Yeah. He's a member of the astronaut corps through and through. So there he is in space, doing some of his science research work. And the commander is the guy on the right, Kirk Brown, who I worked with many times. And you see John Glenn exercising there in the background. So Kirk Brown, the commander, said this: we were worried about John getting too excited before lunch and during ascent because of the heat inside the suit and the stress on your body. I'm just happy we got approval for a defibrillator kit. And on the shuttle during the flight. And we had 2 doctors. Scott Parazinski was there along with Jackie McCarthy. So John had no problems. I just didn't want to be the guy whose name ended up in a game show Jeopardy. Jeopardy answer would be astronaut Kirk Brown. I didn't want the matching question to be, who killed John Glenn? And he came back safe and sound. Okay, we lost the 2nd shuttle, STS-107, and that was in 2003. And all 7 astronauts were my friends, working together on planning the space station. They were on a science research mission together for 16 days in orbit. And they were all my friends. I worked with them week to week, day to day. So, and we were these folks. One of them, Colton Machado, on the top of the video, was my office mate for years. All of them good friends. So I was wondering how did I tell the story of these 7 astronauts in the book. I only had 1 page to do that. But I found in my research that Laurel Clark, Laurel's on the upper right there. 2 down from the top right. That's Laurel Clark. She's a doctor. And I found that she had sent an email to her about 2 days before they were lost on her entry. I read the email and I said, this is how I'm going to tell the story of this woman. And I got permission from her husband, John, to use this email. So Laurel says, hello from above our magnificent planet Earth. The perspective is truly awe-inspiring. This is a terrific mission. And we are very busy doing science around the clock. Just getting a moment to type email is precious. This will be short and distributed to many whom I know and love. I've seen some incredible sights lightning spreading over the Pacific, the aurora australis lighting up the visible horizon, with the city glows of Australia below, the vast plains of Africa, the dunes on Cape Horn, and a continuous line of light extending from north through central and into South America, and a crescent moon setting over the limb of our blue planet. I feel blessed to be here representing our country and carrying out the research of scientists around the world. Thanks to many of you who have supported me in my adventures throughout the years. I hope you can feel the positive energy that's being to the whole planet as we glided over our shared earth. I can't think of a better way to tell the spirit of that through to all of you than read you all as well. And I'm going to close with just the last 10 years of the shuttle's career when we built the space station. Amazing stories that you'll read book about this complex task. That's the ISS scene from the shuttle there as it pulls away. I got to do 3 spacewalks on Atlantis to help construct the space station. Read my story in the book on the STS 98. But at the end of my third spacewalk, I was getting ready to come back into the airlock to finish up 19 hours of spacewalk. And I said to my friend inside the cockpit, Mark Lansing, he's a choreographer. I said, "Are we ahead of schedule tonight?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, you guys are way ahead of schedule today." I said, "Can I have 5 minutes?" And I was right out here on the very front of the space station, right there at the front end of the Destiny laboratory module that we had helped install. That was our mission. So I said 5 minutes, and I held on with my fingertips on the front of the space station. And I just rotated around my weightless spacesuit, so I could almost complete a full circle. And up there above me, the black sky space with those golden solar panels above me, like the sails of a silent wind gale, carrying me around the world. And then out to the horizon there, it's 1,000 miles away. And then below my boots, 220 miles down there to the Pacific Ocean. And tears came to my eyes. I was overwhelmed with the gift from God of being given this view of creation, the cosmos. And I felt very special. There's a special gift that we see that she humans have ever experienced. At the same time, I felt this big. It's very tiny and insignificant. So you talk about a humbling feeling is when you look at yourself in comparison to the universe out there. And it really puts your little place in the universe in perspective. So that was my best 5 minutes in space. I'm going to wrap up here with the last mission of the shuttle. It was STS-135, landing the shuttle Atlantis back on Earth after a trip to the space station. And the crew blasted off with only 4 astronauts. In case they got stuck at the space station, they would stay there until Russian ships could bring them back home. If the shuttle was unable to return them to Earth. So only a minimum crew of 4. And here's the crew: Rex Walheim, Sandy Magnus, Doug Hurley, and Chris Ferguson, commander on Red. And they went up there for a couple of weeks, transferred a lot of spare parts and cargo. They took some last moments to look out the people of the space station at our beautiful home planet. Then they all boarded Atlantis and streaked back home to complete the shuttle's career. Chris Ferguson, the commander, comes to a stop on the runway after they pulled away from the station. And here's the final touchdown. He said, "Mission complete, Houston. After serving the world for over 30 years, the shuttle has earned its place in history. It's come to a final stop." And then he went on to tell Mission Control, "There's a lot of emotion today, but one thing is indisputable. America is not going to stop exploring. Thank you, Columbia, Challenger, Discovery, Endeavor, and our ship Atlantis. Thank you for protecting us and bringing this program to such a fitting end. God bless the United States of America." And that was the final landing of the shuttle as Atlantis coming back to the hangar and the final flight. So I'll just close by saying, I've tried to put the shuttle's career in perspective in the book. And it was, I think, the most important program in NASA's history. Ran for 30 years, transported hundreds of people into space, built the space station. It was a reusable, groundbreaking spacecraft. It wasn't all it was supposed to be, but it really was unmatchable in its capabilities. And we talked about some of the amazing things that it did in space. It paved the way for the construction and operation of the space station. And I say that everything that we know how to do well in space today, 2024, we learned on the station. And that's why we are leaders in space flight on this planet. And I hope we'll stay that way in the 21st century, if we remember the painful and many valuable lessons that they learned during the 50 years of the space shuttle's career. And today, there hasn't been a country on this world that has built anything close to what the space shuttle can do in its 30-year career. So it's almost a leap into the future, way ahead of its time. So with that, I'm going to stop and we'll bring the lights up and I can answer some questions for you. Oh, by the way, there are 3 surviving space-blown shuttles. There's the Discovery down at the Air and Space Museum in Northern Virginia, close to where I live. There is the Endeavour out in California, the California Science Center in LA. And Atlantis, my last ship, is in the Florida Kennedy Space Center. So get out and see one of these and you'll see it's taken dreams of millions of people. So thank you very much. Let's have a talk. Shout it out to me and I will repeat it.
How many nations are represented by crews on the space shuttle program?
Well, I don't know that off the top of my head, but all of our space station partners would probably capture all of those nationalities. So, that Russia, the European nations, Japan, Canada, flew a Brazilian astronaut, and then, NASA would reach agreements periodically with individual nations in a barter agreement through a Mexican astronaut. And I know we again, from those space agencies around the world, our partners, we've flown all of those nationalities. So I think that's going to be the core of our future coalition that's going to go back to the moon. Special training for the physical sensations of going to space on a shuttle. Well, we flew simulators many times in Houston that shook and rattled and rocked back, put you on your back for blast off, and then rocked forward when you got to landing. And they vibrated, and there was a little bit of a war. Yeah, nothing too exciting. We watched real rocket engines being fired on explosively safe, and those were exciting. I've watched one rocket engine for the shuttle being tested, and I thought to myself, I'm going to be running 3 of those, plus the beat rockets. So that's going to be impressive. And then we did ride a centrifuge in San Antonio that spun us around for 8.5 minutes to replicate the entire G load of the trip to space. The maximum G load was 3 Gs, 3 times the normal gravity. Yes. I didn't really have a favorite trip up to space because each mission I flew got better and better and better, with more and more challenges along the way. The first one I'll never forget. My rookie flight into space. And so I got to ride a spaceship for the first time, see the Earth from orbit for the first time. But then the next time, I was the chief scientist on board. So I got to do all the fun stuff, but then also do the additional responsibilities of being a science presenter. So each one got better and better as I went along. I couldn't pick a favorite one.
Next question. I just wanted to say that we do have books for sale outside, and Tom would be signing them after the talk.
Yes, you can step out. It's okay to go out there and buy as many books as you want. It's down in there in the back right next to the door.
What does the night sky look like? The stars, the constellations, familiar, like.
What does the night sky look like up there? Well, the problem is that you're only in darkness for 45 minutes in a single orbit of the 45 daylight, 45 nighttime. And so unless you get your eyes adapted, you're not going to see any stars. If your cabin lights stay on, it'll be too bright, your teeth will close down.
When you were out there in front.
If I was outside doing my spacewalking, I had my floodlights on because I had work to do. And sadly, that was the condition. You want to spacewalk, you got to work for it. So I couldn't really get my eyes adapted on a spacewalk. But in the cabin, many times when I had spare time after bedtime, we turn on all the lights in the cabin while we're getting ready for bed, and then just let our eyes get adapted. And after 15 or 20 minutes, clouds of stars, so many that we could not find the constellations anymore. They submerged into the background of these clouds of stars. So truly awesome. Not for software, but you won't see them during the daytime. It's just too bright outside. Okay.
Hi, I'm Tom.
Tom.
You met earlier. I have what might be a difficult question. You touched on at the beginning of your remarks, the failure of cost. And I remember vividly when the shuttle was being designed in the late seventies. It was conceived as being the cheapest ever way, dollar per pound to get things into orbit. It was going to be absolutely dirt cheap. And I guess it turned out to be otherwise. It wasn't the cheapest, a very cheap way to put pounds of payload into orbit. And I have nothing but respect for what he did and all the science for it and your bravery and your service to this country. And I want to thank you. But what my question is, were there misgivings within the aerospace community about the final design of the shuttle and that it didn't meet the goals that you mentioned at the beginning of what you said?
Sure. The question was there unrest or discontent or criticism in the aerospace community about the fact that the shuttle never met its cost-saving goals? And of course, even from the time it was designed, it was a compromise. NASA was only given $5 billion over 10 years to build it back in the seventies. That was not enough, so they couldn't make a reusable fuel tank. They had to throw that fuel tank away to save money. The boosters were a cost compromise as well, which lost us the shuttle in 1986. So there were these design compromises caused by cost. The shuttle turned out to be so complex that when it landed to be reused again, it needed an army of technicians to inspect everything all over again before it flew again. And that was very costly to pay all those people and take apart the shuttle almost and put it back together. I'm exaggerating, but many inspections required. So it never lived up to its cost goals, and that meant that NASA had to spend more on what they spent more than they promised on operating, and it elbowed out other valuable space projects out of the way. And so I'm a planetary scientist. Many of my colleagues in that community were angry that NASA couldn't fly probes to Jupiter because the shuttle was costing too much. And that was a matter of resentment. So yes, it was a failure on that score. On the other hand, we learned a lot to make the reusability that Elon Musk showed us today practical and achievable, thanks to the lessons that goes on the show.
Thank you again for your work.
Well, thank you for the comments. Yeah. So I get motion sickness. Well, you'll read a little bit about that in the book, but I can tell you that on my first flight, I didn't take any medicine. I went to space. I got sick myself. Now, about a third of the astronauts on the first trip will get sick to their stomach. Another third will be nauseated and feel bad, but they won't actually throw up. And about a third of the people feel no effects at all. They just go around about their work just fine. So I was in the third that got sick to my stomach. They gave us a little air sick bag like on airplanes. It works really well. And after I got sick 3 times on the first day out of space, I said, enough of this, give me the best. And that involves getting shot. You have to be injected into your muscles, and it's a medicine called Phenergan. It works very well. Got the shot, nausea went away. It has a side effect of making me drowsy, so I slept very well that night. Never came back, and on every one of my other flights, I took a pill with that medicine on the launch pad right before I took off. And I never got sick in space again. So my motto is better life through chemistry. Wait a minute.
As launches get more and more common, with things like SpaceX, is there anything that the public should know or consider about environmental impacts?
What was the last part of the question?
Is there anything we should know or consider about environmental impacts of frequent launches or launches of
Environmental effects of frequent launches. Is there something we should worry about? I don't know the answer. I know that so far, we've burned so few rockets over the years that, it's dwarfed by civil aviation emissions in the atmosphere. So not anything to worry about. However, if Mr. Musk wants to go to Mars and he's launching hundreds of giant rockets every year, those burn, at present, they burn methane in natural gas. And so they do create some carbon dioxide, of course, on the way to space and water on the way up there. And water in high altitudes in the stratosphere could create contrails and thin clouds that reflect radiation back or trap it on Earth. We don't know which way the effect will go. But yes, it needs to be studied about how these emissions are affecting the environment over the long run. But in about 100 years or less, we're going to be using electromagnetic launchers. We get flung into orbit by a magnetically trapped sled with no emissions except electricity that has to power that thing. So, we're going to invent tractor beams that will bring the moon right down to Earth. So in a century, I don't think this is going to be a big issue. because we'll have gotten to propulsion systems that are much better than conventional chemical rockets. But hopefully some of these young people will be honest with them. Alex,
What's the difference in zero gravity for the first time?
first time in zero gravity, what does it feel like? Well, I had practiced on the vomit comet to get awake. And we did that 20 seconds at a time, 40 times on a particular flight. You'd be weightless for 20 seconds, slam back to the floor, 20 seconds of weightlessness, slam back to the floor. And you get used to a lot of topsy-turvy feelings with that experience. So when I got to space, I said, oh, I remember this feeling from my aircraft training flights. And I was clumsy and I bumped my head on the ceiling a lot. But after a day or two, you get very well adapted. So it's fun at first, but I'll tell you, when you're having lunch, you don't want under food floating away. So there's some downsides to it, but for the most part, it's a positive. You can work in the upper half of the room and not get in anybody's way while you're working. So that's a lot of questions here. In the back row, green. Right behind you, and I'll come back to you, okay?
Do you stay in touch with your crewmates and how often do you speak?
I flew about 20 astronauts, and I would say that I'm in regular touch with probably 15 of them. Every year, there is an astronaut reunion in Houston, so all the NASA people get together, along with some of our international friends. And then every year, there's a global astronaut meeting, called the Association of Space Explorers Congress. So that's another chance for us to see our crewmates in space. And you know, there's some people who I've drifted away from, just like we would have that same experience, you know, get a job 20 years ago, you're not in touch with everybody that you work with. So I like some people better than others. So that's the nature of it. We take our personalities to space, that we are with that. And so you're gonna like more, some people better than others. But the best thing about my job, bottom line, was that I worked with these tremendously creative and smart people. It was a joy to work with them every day. And that's what I regretted most about leaving the astronaut. I was going to not work with these people anymore on a regular basis. That was really tough to plan to do. And I don't have any regrets, but I'm very glad I get to see them all. So it's a very close-knit fraternity and sorority, if you will, the global community of space explorers. And only about 600 people that are ever on the board. So it's a pretty small club still. Yes. At the end of the mission, what did it feel like on the runway? Well, you just come back from maybe 2 weeks being weightless, and your human beings are very adaptable. So you got quite used to being weightless, and you don't even think about it after about 2 days. You just wake up and you push off the wall and you go over and make breakfast, and you push off and go over to the bathroom. It's all normal. So when you come back to Earth, it's a shock when you're sitting in your chair on the space shuttle and you weigh a ton. Your brain is going, what is going on? Your clothes are made of lead. And it took all of my muscle strength to get out of my chair, down the ladder, out the side hatch of the shuttle. People had to help me physically get out the door of the shuttle to stand up again. And then after that hour, your brain says, oh, I remember this planet. You grew up here. So you get over that heavy feeling in about an hour. It takes about 3 days to get all your coordination back. And you can read the book, there's some funny stories about that in there. But basically, if I dropped my pencil on the floor and tried to bend over and pick it up on day one, after I returned, I would fall over on my face. So I didn't do that. Braced myself against the wall and asked other people to pick up things for me. So thanks for that question. Back to you.
I guess you kind of answered this already, but I was gonna ask if you had anything to
Over the long term, no for my readjustment to Earth, because in 3 days it will all come back, all the coordination will come back normally. 3 days, but one funny story was I tried to drive back to the office the day after landing to go see all the film. You guys know what film is? Yeah. We shot film and cameras, and I went to the photo lab to see all the thousands of pictures of the and I ran my car over the curb, just getting out of my vehicle. And when the two right wheels went over the curb and up on the grass, I put it in park, I shut off the ignition, I walked out home. And I said to my wife, Liz, would you take me to work? And so when you come back from the space station today, they won't let you drive for 3 weeks. Wow. It's that long to do rehab, 4 to 5 weeks total before you're back to this.
What advice would you give to young people interested in becoming astronauts and joining the space program?
Yeah, advice to young people who want to join the space program, just go to the NASA website, nasa.gov. There is an astronauts page. If you look to nasa.gov, astronauts in research, you'll find the requirements page. Tells you all about training, what basic requirements, but they need a master's degree, you need 3 years of work experience, and master's has to be in science or engineering. You need 3 years of work experience, and then you need to have general good health, and then you can apply. So that's what you've got to get yourself to sometime in your late 20s, probably. And then the other ingredient that you don't talk about is persistence, because you're going to fail. They're going to reject you multiple times, probably. I got turned down twice before I went to the astronaut school. So don't give up, make yourself better qualified, improve your resume, and then keep knocking on the door, kicking on the door till you knock it down and you get an opportunity like I have. Plus, today there's SpaceX, there's Blue Origin, there's Sierra Space, there's Virgin Galactic. Lots of other people are hiring astronauts besides just us. So don't give up, keep trying. Yes. On STS-80, what were my responsibilities on my third shuttle flight? I was on Columbia, and I was the flight engineer, first of all, behind the two pilots, helping them get the ship to and from orbit. I was the robot arm operator for one of the two satellites that we launched and retrieved from space. There were two on that mission. One was an Astronomy Observatory, and another one was the Material Science Lab, the one deployed and retrieved. And then I was the number 2 spacewalker on 2 planned spacewalks and test tools for building the space station. And because of a mechanical problem, which you can read about in my book, Skywalking, we weren't able to do the spacewalk. So didn't get the spacewalk on that flight, but later on Atlantis, I got to do those spacewalks at the space station. So as I mentioned before, every flight gave me more and more challenges, and this one had a whole bunch of them thrown at me. Not as many as on the last, well, that's like 4th trip, but it's still a very much a meat and potato space flight with lots to do. Yes.
When you looked at the Earth in your 5-minute special time, and you saw, can you characterize the colors versus what we today see in the film rendered imagery of the Earth? Was the chromatic experience or the field of view and like a whole Earth in your face? You were at about 200 or so while the earlier generation of astronauts had cruise up to 400 plus mile range. They had a different experience, not a shuttle, we was talking about. I was just wondering, since you've actually seen that, can you spend 30 seconds or a minute to talk about what the Earth is like?
He's asking me to describe the scene of the Earth in high fidelity. And so I tried to do that in the memoir Skywalking, looked that up in the library here. And I spent a lot of time in that book talking about the view of the Earth. And I recorded my impressions of the Earth in real time with a tape recorder while I was looking out the window. And I transcribed that in my Skywalking book. So take a look at that. There's a vignette of my view through the space helmet on STS-98 in Space Shuttle Stories here. But go see an IMAX movie, anyone that was made by the shuttle crew or the space station crews. And IMAX does it, and there's 3D IMAX too, with the glasses. And you'll see the view out the window in 3 dimensions. And it's pretty close. You don't get the peripheral wraparound vision in like real life basically. But that 3D IMAX camera, which I helped film with in space, really does a good job of capturing the colors and the sweep of the Earth view. And it is moving to everybody who goes there, religious or not. I think everybody's moved by that experience. And I think, as some people have properly pointed out, it would be a very good thing if every chief of state of every nation in the world was sent into space to experience that view of the one Earth that they inhabit. Some of them we can leave out. Wait there. Last question, okay?
Can you hear me?
The EVA suit, what's it like moving around in that? Well, the suit has to keep you alive. And so it's in a vacuum. So it has to keep an envelope of oxygen around you and your face so that you can survive. And by inflating the suit with oxygen at a low pressure, you'll live, but it makes the suit very stiff. And it blows the arms out like this, and the legs get stiff. And unless the suit is very well designed, you're gonna have a lot of muscle strength required to move the arms in with one another, instead of them being out here like this. So just to hold your arms in here, the design helps you a bit, but you've got to clench your fists around tools against the stiff gloves, and do that for 7 hours straight. And you've got to keep bending the arms over and over. Now, the designers try their best to make the joints working in favor, but it's not a perfect system. The new suits coming out from Blue Origin and SpaceX and Axiom Space, they're going to be better than the current shuttle suit that's still used at the space station today. But it's very fatiguing. I would say that you have to be at an intercollegiate athlete level of fitness to do the spacewalks. And we trained in a gym with a trainer, personal trainer to help us get ready. And then we did all the running, jogging, and bicycling and stuff out to build the stamina that we needed. So you got to train to do the physical task. And even then, when you come in at the end of 7 hours outside, you're going to be, they'll say that your arms feel like noodles. And when I used to train in the pool underwater in Houston, underwater is when you get in the space and you float between the top and the bottom. And your spacesuit then behaves a lot like it does in space. It's inflated, it's stiff, it's hard to move. I'd come out of those sessions and I would not be able to type on my laptop until the next day. My arms were shot. And so what I will say is that it's a good thing that I trained 10 hours on Earth underwater for every hour that I spent outside in orbit. Otherwise, I would not have been physically up to the task. So it's the hardest job an astronaut does. Thanks for the questions. I'll be outside, right here, we'll turn over the meeting to talk about that.
Great, thank you so much. This was amazing. Okay. Okay, so there is no photographs. I don't think that was really quick, so let's get on with the science. Thank you.
And I want to mention that yesterday I posted a 30-minute podcast interview with Astronaut Jones. The podcast is fun with the Maryland Senate podcast. Just find like on the website. More videos, so you want to hear some more about the experiences and
Take care.
So are we not meeting? Oh, okay.
You guys would like a picture, let me know. I'm gonna turn this off.
Joel. There you go.
Why, thank you.
That is, next. When did you get back?
Well, we've been here all summer.
Oh, okay.
We leave the
Oh,
3
when
days
you
after,
go then?
3 days after the start party, the 29th, 2 weeks. We're out of here. And no plans, 6 months.
Okay.
Election doesn't go right. Love it.
I agree.
Joel, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Jim Kaiser, I was in touch with, is Crystal, the librarian?
Yes.
Is she here?
She's right. Crystal, right?
The
Crystal in the black.
Oh,
Black right here.
she had probably placed a book for me.
Oh,
I
okay.
was on the email about getting book.
That's Crystal right there. Yeah, that's right. Sure thing. Hey,
See you at the
Ken.
next meeting.
Right up. Hi, Ken. Oh, 14 people. Maybe people here.
Okay, now I've got my signatures, so I'm gonna move move the meeting over to the other room.
Are those for people who are online?
No, one's for me and one's for the club. We actually got a copy of the book, and he signed it to the Howard Astronomical League. Keep looking up.
Wait, nice.
So
You got one for home?
I got one for me and one for House.
Really nice.
Now,
Is there gonna be another part of the meeting too, or?
yes, and for any HAL members, we're gonna move the meeting to another room. It's, sorry for the delay, but if you can hang on online for just a couple of minutes, we can connect to the system over there.
Okay, sounds good.
How many nights are your time? But he posted something the other day, oh, the Aurora, 'cause he's down in Virginia Beach or something like that. Reach out to him.
Thanks for
Right. What about take this to?
Yes, you remember who the host is? That's for the club.
I know, it's for us, yeah, for the. Are you the host that night or? The host? Okay, you're gonna take it then?
Yeah.
Because I will be there.
Are you gonna come over to the rest of the meeting?
Yeah, I can go.
Can you bring it over there for you?
I take whatever you want.
Where are we going? Follow me. I'll show you. Yeah, if you could,
Go ahead and grab the laptop.
yeah. If you could grab the laptop, yeah. Sorry, everybody.
Close your
A couple minutes.
No motion
Yeah.
sickness.
You can grab that. You're gonna think about it, right? Excuse me.
Go look it up, go look it up.
Yeah, self-situated, that's like everybody else. Did you connect this?
Oh, I can try, sure.
Just plug her into there's power back down there. Let me see if I can get the lady to give me the HDMI.
Out there?
No,
After this,
no,
your meeting still going on?
yeah, they moving to another room. Which one?
I drove this up here, but I don't know. Can you catch it?
What is it?
I don't know.
I'll get it.
Well, I can wait. Were you coming down here?
Yeah, I'm looking on the mouse. Headset.
Hey, Tommy, by the way, your mic is on.
Just a little drunk.
These your glasses? Yes. Oh, okay.
Hello, guys. Can you hear us again? We're back. We're trying to get set up here.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Did somebody say something online?
Hello, testing, 1, 2, 3. Is
Hey
that good
there.
enough?
Testing one,
Yeah,
two, three.
appreciate that. Thank you. I'm trying to set the audio to the room's audio.
Do you hear me
Um,
over there?
Yeah, we can hear you, Jose.
Oh, okay, okay. Just checking.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I guess I should say I can hear you. I won't speak for anybody else.
Can you speak for yourself again? Did somebody online say something?
STEM Festival hat.
Jose was asking if he could be heard.
Perfect. I got you through the speakers in the room now.
Oh, okay. I guess I can still be here.
T-shirt,
Yeah,
t-shirts also.
you're giving away those?
So wear them,
Sure, I'll take.
medium, large, extra large.
They're like just general unisex sizes?
Yeah.
What size?
I'll take a small.
Yeah.
That's okay.
What is that?
That's wait, the kids, I wouldn't usually want them, but this is a large.
I'll take, that was a large?
All right, does everybody see the screen?
Yes, I see it.
And you can hear us speaking.
Yes, I can hear you.
See it.
All right, let me try to make the camera not cockeyed here.
Yeah, I can hear it.
Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to continue the meeting. We have to be out of here at 10 minutes of 9. They close the library at 9. So I'm just going to go ahead and move on. Are you guys seeing the agenda screen?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So.
Yes.
Great, terrific. Thank you all for coming and online. And for those of us in the room, thanks for coming to the meeting. I hope you enjoyed the astronaut Tom Jones presentation.
Great.
I did, and I actually got a book signed. Could you guys see me getting my book signed on the video?
Yes.
Oh, cool. So, all right, anyways, so the rest of our meeting is we have some announcements. And then we have a special travel report. I like when people travel to, Arjun gave a nice report on his trip to an observatory in India, and Gary Richardson has a few slides talking about the trip that he recently took as well. So going into the announcements, upcoming star party on the 26th, and that one is in coordination with the Maryland STEM, it'll be part of the Maryland STEM Festival, so we might get extra foot traffic because Phil is advertising this as part of his organization as well. And then so that's on the 26th. Joel, Cheryl, and I will be yeah, you're on the list, Joel.
I think I traded with somebody, but I'll be there. So
Okay, all right.
Somebody else is.
Yeah, and then there's only I think this is gonna be a great star party. I'm just, the weather is gonna be good and the temperature, and it's gonna be dark early. We're gonna have lots of kids. I think it's gonna be a great one.
Halloween candy.
Sorry?
Halloween candy?
Oh, yeah, there you go. We can bring some Halloween, some people can dress up. Can dress up as a telescope. I don't know. Okay, so in addition to that, there are some other recent events or upcoming events. And one of the upcoming events is on the 19th, 2 days from now. There will be an event, and I'll let Crystal talk about that in a second. And then there's also, I'm sure that nobody online or in this room is unaware, but we have the Aurora recent activity that we had a star party, and it was a very good star party, and it was very well attended by HAL members and non-HAL members. And so in addition to thank you to Jose and David Stein and Dana for marshaling people around in and out. And also Jose, kudos to Jose, because he was so nice to the people, the random members of the public who showed up in the park, that we got 3 people sign up for HAL that night. So thank you for that, Jose, for being a good host. The other thing that's big in the news is that Comet, does anyone know how to, Chinshan, I think. Chinshan Atlas, we're all missing it right now. It's out in the sky. But we're all dedicated HAL members, so we're at the meeting. But I'm very excited about getting some shots of it with my telescope and some views of it through the scope this weekend. I think the weather's supposed to be clear, so look forward to that, and it'll be around for a while. It's going to get dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. It was naked eye the last couple of days, I think. So definitely go out and enjoy that. Look into the southwest in the early evening. Crystal, you want to say a word or two?
Hello, everybody online and in the room. So, yeah, as Victor mentioned, there's a big event happening soon on my campus at Glenelg Country School. This Saturday from noon to 4, we're putting on a solar science and engineering celebration. So we have several participating organizations, including, I'm sorry, I forgot I'm a little short. The Howard Astronomical League is going to be represented by several of our members. We have the University of Maryland, Baltimore campus, and also College Park represented, the Howard County library systems, and many smaller organizations as well. And it's going to be really exciting, a lot of fun. There's going to be a weather balloon. There's some amateur radio people and radio telescope people who are going to talk about satellite communication as well. Lots of family-friendly activities. So NASA design challenges. Of course, we're offering some solar telescopes. The weather looks fantastic. I have over 50 some volunteers, nearly 25 stations. It's a huge Maryland STEM Festival event. It'll be really cool. So there's my little pitch for that. That's happening this Saturday.
And Glenelg Country School is not very far from the observatory and from all of our other HAL activities.
Yes.
You can find it online. Okay, thanks. Anything else?
Then the book of the month.
I have 2 slides. Stay here though, don't go away. So just talking about the Aurora, I just thought I would show this that Bruce Elliott sent. He took a little time lapse the other on the 9th at the observatory. You can see if several of us in the near the observatory taking pictures with our cell phones, but Bruce he had enough foresight to do a time lapse with his phone on a tripod. So it's pretty cool. And that night, this was the 10 p.m. apparition. There was a 7-ish p.m. Viewing, and that was okay. But this was really quite bright. Like you could see those striations naked eye. The cameras always do a better job of, picking it up, but cool. So there's that. And then I just wanted to, as far as the comet goes, I just wanted to show this picture from Daniel Lowen. And this was taken, he hiked up to the top of Annapolis Rocks in, a little bit west of our, west of Frederick, I think. And this was the first night. And on this night, it wasn't even good seeing. And he got this picture. There was like clouds. There was that night, there was dust from the storms the smoke from the fires out west. It wasn't even a good night for it. I was out and I couldn't get hardly anything with my camera. Anyways, he got this shot and I just think it's really, really, really cool. And as you guys have seen, there's been lots of other amazing photos. So back to Crystal for her second part of the.
Yeah, so our book of the month is the Space Shuttle Stories, Firsthand Astronaut Accounts from all 135 missions by Tom Jones. And so the NASA astronaut and spacewalker. So if you were here for the first half, we talk. He did a fantastic job. So here are some of my things I can offer in addition to everything that he mentioned. The beautifully illustrated book offers readers a unique glimpse into the challenges, triumphs, and profound personal connections forged through these historic missions. For me personally, I found it an emotional roller coaster seeing the mission through the eyes of countless mission specialists, pilots, and crew members. During the first few interviews, I was impressed by the level of shock that things actually worked. Well, until they didn't. In mission number 9, there is a note about how 2 of the flight computers failed and 2 of the 3 auxiliary powers units caught fire during reentry. I put a sticky note in our HAL copy as a touch of fire. Or how by mission 15, there was considerable O-ring erosion, but only after the Challenger did they learn that STS-51C was the next most severe erosion of any mission up to that point. Of course, there are plenty of these stories with unique human moments. When Mike Coates, a commander for STS-29R, was seated next to then President George H.W. Bush for a White House dinner, he commented on how nice it was that the crew and their families to visit the White House after a flight. And it was a shame that it wasn't a regular thing. The president asked, well, why can't it be? Mike Coates responded, well, you're the president, sir. So during his 4 years as president, every crew got to tour the White House, or when someone dropped their sunglasses during final approach, rather than correcting the guidance, one particular astronaut said, Bob, take over. So throughout this book, these overwhelming transformative nature of these kind of experiences emphasized in many different ways. There's the awe-inspiring beauty of seeing Earth from space, the connections amongst the crew members, the sense of accomplishment that comes with contributing to scientific research and technological advancement. It all inspired for me, personally, definitely a sense of wonder and excitement. My favorite little piece of human connection, which he did mention in his little presentation there, is the story of Kathy Thornton, a mission specialist on STS-61, who mentions what was extra special about the first flight to service the Hubble Space Telescope is that her daughter, at the time, was 11 years old and grew up to get her PhD in astrophysics using Hubble data. She says, I hope Hubble lasts forever. In conclusion, these interviews and stories offer a fairly emotional and human perspective on spaceflight that should absolutely be remembered as a part of our collective history. I highly recommend the book. We now own a signed copy as a part of our library collection. It's a beginner-friendly, kids, teenagers, adults. It's worth the read. It's definitely worth the honor of being on your coffee table. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you for that, Crystal. That was quite a nice review. I almost wish that we could have got him over here to hear you do the review. All right, so now we have Gary, who's going to tell us about his trip to Ohio.
Are you going to go through the slides for me?
I'll click for you.
Okay, great, thanks. I'll just sit here. Hopefully that'll be close enough. So thank you. I'm Gary Richardson. I'm going to share an experience that I had at my son's university. He goes to Denison University in Granville, Ohio. When we first toured the school, one of the buildings that stood out, of course, to me is this beautiful white marble observatory. And I told my son on our first tour, I said, you've got to get me inside that building before you leave here. So finally, the fall semester of his senior year, we got a personal tour from the head of the astronomy department there. So I thought I'd share a little bit about that experience with the group. We can go on to the next one. So Denison University, it's not, I wouldn't say widely known. It's a really small liberal arts college in Granville, Ohio. Was established in 1831, so it's been around for quite a while. My son goes there as a computer science and data analytics major. In 1909, a gentleman named Ambrose Swasey provided money for the construction of an observatory and the equipment, the original equipment that was put inside the actual building. At the time, I didn't know this. I thought it was interesting. His company actually manufactured some of the world's finest and largest telescopes. They built the telescope for the Lick Observatory, the US Naval Observatory, and several others. Despite some research that I did, unfortunately, I wasn't able to find any major discoveries that were made at the Swasey Observatory in Ohio, despite the fact that in its day, it was actually one of the premier telescopes in Ohio and was used for science. We can go on to the next slide. So this is the backside of the observatory. It's made of Vermont marble. This was actually a really rainy, dreary day, so the picture is not great, but you get a sense of the elegance of the building. It actually houses a 9-inch refractor and a whole bunch of other equipment that they have that they carved out. You can see the metal railing around a platform. They bring out more modern telescopes out there for the students to use. So it was built in 1909. Between 1969 and 1970, they renovated the interior and the dome was replaced. And I couldn't find any history on the dome, but the head of the department who was giving the tour said he thought it was originally a wooden dome that was manually turned. And then later, again in 1978, the telescope was repaired, it was cleaned, put back together. Some of the manual gears were motorized and added to improve the use of the telescope. And they still do use it today. And it really hasn't been upgraded again since 1978. So what you see has been there for several decades now. So inside, and this is a picture of the scope on the inside, it's housed inside a more modern motorized dome. It's not manually moved anymore. And the telescope itself is moved, assisted by motorized gears. It is not auto-guided. It's still manually focused. In fact, you can just see the focus knobs on the brass end on the right side of the picture. They still use those knobs to manually focus the telescope. They do still open it to the public for visual astronomy. The students get to use it, and then they have public events occasionally as well. You can see there's a better picture of it coming up, but you can see some of the old gears that are used to identify which direction the scope is pointed in and how they actually turned it. One of the axes, not both of them, but one of them is actually turned with an old ship's captain wheel. I didn't get a good photo of that. It was kind of a funny touch. Anyway, we can go on to the next slide. So in addition to the main refractor, that big, 12 or 13 foot refractor that they have in there, they have several smaller modern telescopes. So they've got a bunch of Celestron equipment there that they drag out to the observing platform. In addition to that, though, they also have, it was original to the building, an old transit instrument, a transit telescope. So it was used really for observing star positions for nautical almanacs. They don't use it anymore. They've moved it off its original platform, but it only rotates on one axis mechanically. The other axis is rotated by the rotation of the Earth. They don't use it anymore. In its day, it was a state-of-the-art piece of equipment, but now obviously no longer. And then I thought the spiral staircase from the main entrance to the building up to the actual telescope was pretty cool. So I took a photo going down the stairs. So I just thought it was a fun example of the merger between art and science. It's a beautiful building in its day. It was a state-of-the-art piece of astronomical equipment. No great discoveries made there, but certainly used for many, many decades. And they're still using it today, which was great to see.
Can you go back to the picture of the scope?
Okay, back a couple of slides. One more back.
It doesn't look like it's that big an aperture, and the thing is, and this is the perspective there, and the thing looks huge.
Yeah, so it's a 9-inch,
Oh, it is 9.
it's a 9-inch
Oh, okay.
refractor,
Okay, it is 9 inch.
and it's like an F-15 scope.
And it looks like they got a deal on the same paint that we use to paint the rock.
So would you recommend, I mean, where is it in the state?
So it's about 25 minutes outside of Columbus, Ohio, a little bit north and a little bit east of
Okay,
Columbus.
so not necessarily dark skies, but an interesting place to see some
Yeah.
historical,
Yeah,
not the best star party viewing.
no, certainly not. It's not a dark sky environment.
Cool. Well, anybody likes old gears, check it out. Thank you for that. Anything else?
No, that's all I have. Thanks for letting me share it.
Thank you very much for sharing.
The telescope, the funding was provided in 1909. The whole thing was completed in 1910. There's a funny story about it, actually. Initially, he donated money to the school and he didn't earmark it for anything. And he said he hoped they would use it for an observatory, and they used it for a gymnasium. So then he donated more money again and said, this time you're going to build an observatory.
Cool. I wonder if Marty over at Company 7, he would probably get a kick out of looking at some of that stuff.
Yeah, I told him about the visit.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, he was interested.
Okay, Wayne, you're up.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're basically going to be talking about cosmic light pollution. So we all know, of course, light pollution affects us on the ground. We've all experienced that in some way or other. What's not commonly well appreciated is that space-based observatories also deal with unwanted sources of light, particularly zodiacal light, which is sunlight scattered by interplanetary dust grains, is significant to Earth-based and Earth-orbiting and near-Earth observatories such as Hubble and James Webb. Okay, so it's highly concentrated to the plane of the ecliptic, but it does extend out a few degrees either side. There's also scattered starlight, which is mostly an instrumental thing. It's literally stars outside your field of view, hitting structures and optics and dust and this kind of stuff in your telescope tube and scattering the light onto your detector. There's also diffuse galactic light, which is light that's light from the Milky Way galaxy, stars in the Milky Way galaxy that get scattered by interstellar dust grains that then get scattered into the direction you happen to be looking. So these sources constitute basically cosmic light pollution. And these are foreground sources of light when trying to measure the cosmic optical background light, which is what we're really talking about here, trying to get a measure of that. How much light is there coming from the universe? And cosmic optical background is the result of all light generation processes over the history of the universe. Notice that these three sources of unwanted light are not light generation, they're actually scattering light that has already been generated. So next slide.
I want to ask a question, but maybe I should wait. Let me wait.
Okay, don't forget it. So next. Well, I'm sorry, hang on, go back one. I said next twice, and you nicely obeyed instructions. Okay, so what we're talking about now are observations from the New Horizons spacecraft. Remember, it flew past Pluto and then past Arrokoth and is way out in the Kuiper Belt now. But they have used New Horizons to produce the highest precision measurement of the cosmic optical background so far. And it's a paper by Postman et al. In the Astrophysical Journal that was published in September. And I just want to point out that a HAL member, Steve Kennard, is a co-author of the paper. He worked on it, the camera that was used to make the observations. And the camera was New Horizons long-range reconnaissance imager, the LORRI camera, which is about an 8-inch aperture Cassegrain telescope with a 1032 by 1024 detector. Okay. The last 8 columns on the detector are insensitive to light. They're actually blocked from seeing light. And that provides a combined dark current and bias level for the detector. And so that results in a 1024 by 1024 active imaging area. For these observations, they used 4x4 binning. So they had 256 by 256 pixel images. And each pixel was 4.08 arc second. And so they had a total imaging field of 17.4 arc seconds, about half the size of the full moon. So the camera has no filters, and so the detector itself and the optics determine the wavelength range, and it stretches from 0.4 microns to 0.9 microns with what's called a pivot wavelength of 0.68 microns. A pivot wavelength is basically just a way to talk about the effective wavelength of the observations. Okay, it's a mathematical calculation of the transmission of the optics, and it becomes the pivot wavelength at 0.68 microns. So they'll report their wavelength as 0.68 microns, but understand it's really 0.4 to 0.9. Now, New Horizons, being out in the Kuiper belt, is essentially beyond any detectable zodiacal light. That means that the largest source of this cosmic light pollution I just talked about is eliminated. They basically went to a dark sky site. So the other 2 sources, the scattered starlight and the diffuse galactic light, are minimized by target selection and careful calibrations. So next slide. So they selected a bunch of fields with the following criteria. They needed the sun to be at least 95 degrees away from the direction they were looking in order to keep sunlight out of the aperture. So that would affect the scattered sunlight into the Lori aperture. It also, there are some structures on the New Horizons spacecraft that if they were more than 90 degrees, but not 95 degrees, those structures were visible to the camera and would scatter light in. So they had to go to 95 degrees. They required galactic latitudes to be greater than 40 degrees to reduce the scattered starlight, because there are simply fewer stars up in that high galactic latitude. And they needed ecliptic latitude to be 15 degrees, which reduces uncertainties in the far infrared data used to select fields. We'll talk about it in just a minute, but they used far infrared data and to do it, but the far infrared data came from the IRAS satellite back in the 1980s. And that was low Earth orbit. And so it was deep inside the zodiacal light. And so the zodiacal light caused uncertainties in their data at low ecliptic latitudes. So they have to be greater than 15 degrees to avoid those uncertainties. And this is just an example of the fields that they looked at. These are their images. And so they're 256 by 256 pixels, and they have 16 fields in total that they used. Next. So this is the diagram showing the field. So this is galactic, this whole sky in galactic coordinates. So you have the North Galactic Pole at the top, the South Galactic Pole at the bottom, and the galactic equator across the middle. And the data that's presented here is the 100 micron data from the improved reprocessing of the IRAS survey data. So it's improved from the original IRAS survey, but it's the same data. They just recalibrated it, reprocessed it. And so the fields that they chose are indicated by the various colored dots, with the primary fields being the green dots, what they call the NCOB, the New Horizons Cosmic Optical Background Fields. Then they had the diffuse galactic light fields, or the yellow triangles, and the scattered starlight fields are the blue triangles, and the interplanetary dust fields are the gray dots. Okay, so next slide. So they got all over the sky, but north of 40 degrees of galactic latitude. So next,
They purposely avoided the large Magellanic Cloud and the small
yes,
Magellanic.
they did. They wanted dark sites, positions. So they have their exposure strategy was to take 16 exposures of 65 seconds each for the cosmic optical background and the interplanetary dust fields. And they took 8 exposures, 65 seconds each for the diffuse galactic light and scattered starlight fields. And what they did was they used the 16 exposures to determine the sky level in each individual exposure. And they did this by masking out foreground stars, galaxies, hot pixels, cosmic ray hits, that kind of stuff. And then they fit a Gaussian to the peak of the histogram of the remaining sky pixels. And the field of view sky level is then the average of the individual measurements. So they had 16 individual measurements. They determined the average, and that became the sky level for that particular pointing. And the contributions of many components were then determined for each of the field of view, and I've listed them here. So they did integrated galaxy light, which is all the faint galaxies that they could see. They measured the scattered galaxy light. They used H-alpha emission, faint stars from the Milky Way, and then there were the primary light sources, light pollution sources of the diffuse galaxy light and scattered starlight. So they determined what each of those were for each field of view. Next. And this plot basically shows the main results, not the conclusions, but the results. And this bar chart, it's a stacked bar chart where for each bar, they've stacked up all the individual contributions to get the total contribution. So the contributions you can see are different colors. You got the faint galaxies in blue, the scattered starlights in yellow, that kind of stuff. Then at the top of each stack, there's a purple dot that represents the sum, and then it has error bars, so you can see how well they think they know that sum. And then the little horizontal lines over each bar are the measured sky level for each of the pointings for the cosmic optical background. The error bars were estimated by a careful Monte Carlo techniques where they ran 10,000 simulations for each field of view for the cosmic optical background and the diffuse galactic light fields of views. And they included both random and systematic errors. So you can see they got really consistent results. So yeah, okay, next, I'm sorry. And so here we have the primary conclusion type results. And so what we have here, all the data points are measurements of the cosmic optical background. And the New Horizons from this paper is the black one kind of right in the lower center with its error bars. And the main thing to glean from this is its error bars are much smaller than most any others. Okay. And in particular, the up at the top, you have some HST measurements. So that long bar extending down just to the right of the legend, that's an HST error bar. And then there's a second one over to the right. And the cyber, the purple with the diamonds, are also near Earth observations. So they're rocket based. They're not even satellite. And so they have very large error bars. And the other are different techniques that were used. The colored lines down at the bottom are spectra of the integrated galaxy light. So all the faint galaxies, this is what you would expect to observe from 2 different studies. And the error bars are shown by those dashed lines. And then the shaded errors are determinants of the integrated galaxy light spectrum based on very high energy gamma ray observations. So you can see that from the expectation, the New Horizons and everybody else basically is above what we would expect just from galaxies. So next, I am hurrying because I know we got other stuff to do. So their conclusions are that these are the highest precision measurements of the cosmic optical background thus far made. In fact, its detection is significant at 6.8 sigma level. And it has they measured a value of 11.616, excuse me, nanowatts per square meter per steradian. Don't worry about the units very much, but just understand we're talking nanowatts per square meter. These are very, very low signal levels. And so the 6.8 sigma means that there's a better than 99.9997% chance that the value of the cosmic optical background is not zero. There's 3 chances in a million that it's not zero. Okay.
Hello, thank you for coming to the Elk Ridge branch of the Howard County Library System. We are closing at 9 o'clock. At 5 minutes before we close, there will be automatic shutdown of the computers and copiers, printers, and other machines. So if there is any business like that that you need to do, please do so now. Thank you for using the Elk Ridge branch of the Howard County Library System.
Okay, quickly. The integrated galaxy lights estimated to be 8.17 in those same units. So we have a difference of 2.99 with an uncertainty of 2.03, which is consistent with 0. And so their conclusion is the simplest interpretation is that the cosmic optical background is completely due to galaxies. Questions?
My question was, where is this on the Bortle scale?
Oh, who knows?
0.00001 on the Bortle scale?
No, it's probably -8 or something.
How many watts per, well, when you use your sky meter and you look at at Alpha Ridge, what kind, how many watts per square meter per steradian are we?
I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you.
But okay, so this is really, 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 really small compared to.
Yeah. I actually tried to find the conversion to surface brightness, but in magnitudes per square arc second, and I could not find it. I'm not sure why.
All right, well, that was interesting. Thanks. So even the guys up in space still have to contend with a little bit of light pollution.
Yep.
All right, well, we'll move on. And we don't have that much time, but we don't have too many. And this will leave a little bit of time for discussion too. So I'll just jump into the Astro Images. Oh, actually, before we do that, I noticed, I was just poking around. I noticed Jim Tomney is on. We didn't go through the what's up in the, in the sky, in the shallow sky, but I'll just say, and Jim, please chime in. Obviously, we talked about the comet is good to look at. Saturn is still really nice in the early evening, and if you're a morning person, Jupiter's coming out, and it's getting out earlier and earlier and earlier. So
and Mars.
And yeah, and Mars. Is Mars after Jupiter a little bit?
Yes.
Yeah. So perhaps we'll get some planetary at the okay, so let's move on to our Jim, did you want to add anything?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Saturn's definitely prime time right now, and Jupiter's coming on strong. So if you're interested in the shallow sky, those are your main things.
And Jupiter is going to transit at like some ridiculously high, like 65 degrees or something.
Yeah, it's in the upper levels of the zodiac for us. So yeah, this is going to be a nice opposition. December 7th, I think. So it'll put it in Taurus probably. So.
Okay.
Yep, lots of very little atmospheric interference.
Cool. Thanks. All right. So Joe Novotka, are you on? This was his image of the Cocoon Nebula that he sent, and I don't remember the capture image details. But we'll move on. And Gary Richardson, who is here with us and just gave us that nice little trip report, has another interesting thing to tell us about.
Yeah, I sent 3 images in. This is one of 3. They were all about 1 hour exposures on my Celestron Origin, which is Celestron's new entrance into the smart telescope arena. It's imaging only, there's no eyepiece. This is right out of the scope. I cropped it a little bit. I'm not smart enough to do the fancy post-processing work that you guys do. Although you have the option to do that in the Origin. You can download the raw files and do your own stacking and stretching and stuff. But this is right out of the scope, about 60 minutes of 15-second exposures.
So this is Celestron's answer to the Sea Star.
No, it's also about 8 times the cost.
Oh, it's quite a bit more expensive than the Sea Star.
So
I love it.
I mean, I saw one in action a couple weeks ago, and we were headed next door to the Sea Star. We were aiming at the same target. And it's dramatic. It's 4 inches, right?
6.
6 inches.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the other 2 images are part of the Cygnus loop, the Eastern Veil Nebula and the Western Veil Nebula. These were there's a little bit of elongation in some of the stars. It was directly overhead and sort of a long imaging session, but I really liked the detail. And these are right out of the scope. I did nothing to these. This is how they came through my iPhone.
Colors in that second one were great.
Yeah. And that's like about an hour, you said, of integration time?
About an hour, yeah.
And it live stacks right in front of your eyes there?
Yeah.
Neat.
Where are you in a dark enough sky to get that?
I took this one out of my driveway, which is like Portal 7. I'm right near River Hill High School, so I get a lot of the light pollution from the parking lot lights there. M20, the first image I actually took at Alpha Ridge. But both of the other 2, both of those were taken right out of my driveway.
And this guy's really low in the sky too. That's really nice for such a low.
Yeah, I was trying to get a longer imaging session, but it went below the tree line and the scope shut off, so.
Thanks, that's really amazing. And as long as we're talking about the Veil Nebula, Bruce, are you on? Bruce is he took this at Alpha Ridge and he's using, I know that he used the same quad filter that we have in the observatory, and he has a relatively small refractor. But he took this at Alpha Ridge. It's very, very nice. Chris, are you on? So this is the Wizard Nebula, and I think it's amazing. I mean, it's not the narrowband Hubble palette, but it's still quite a very, very detailed and beautiful shot. So I don't know he might have told me to capture details, but I forgot. But just thought that this was really, really nicely done. And Jim Johnson is here.
This is the Elephant's Trunk Nebula and Hubble palette taken through a 4-inch refractor of 4.3 and about 7 hours of integration, all total. I think I have RGB stars in there. Took the narrowband stars out and put in RGB stars, so I get nice reds and blues.
With a monochrome camera.
Monochrome camera, yes. Sulfur 2, oxygen 3, and hydrogen alpha. Thank you.
Really, really nice. Just gorgeous, actually.
It is 8 of 9, just letting you know.
Okay. And Wayne?
Okay, this is a Bell 347, which is a cluster of galaxies in Andromeda. This is actually what they call a very sparse cluster. It's a Bell classified it as richness class 0, which means it had between 30 and 49 members. And in fact, a Bell 347 has about 32 members. It has a recession velocity of about 5,500 kilometers per second, which implies a distance of about 250 million light years. So a little over 20 times farther away than Andromeda, 100 times farther away than Andromeda. And The brightest star there on the upper right is a magnitude 6.7.
Wow.
The brightest galaxy, which is kind of across the center, no, down, right above, go down, go down, go down, go down. Nope, right there. That galaxy is NGC 910 and it's a V equals 12.25.
Wow.
And this was all done at Alpha Ridge Park, and it's 8 hours and 44 minutes with a monochrome camera.
Awesome. Awesome. I love these little spirals up here.
Yeah, they're great.
Guy and this guy. I love it. I love it. All right, we're about to get shut down here. So thank you guys. I'm gonna just, yeah, we're it's time. So thank you all for joining online. It was great to, it was an interesting meeting. We have to thank Phil Rogowski. So, you all have a nice evening and,
Don't forget to stop recording.
that's what I'm trying to find right now. Thank you.
Guys.
Bye, everybody.
All right, thanks, guys.